I think it's all about just a passion for what you do, just a passion for, and that translates over to what I do now, that it is on you to, like you get out what you put in, right? So like I don't
Sure.
expect this person to put in work if I'm not going to put in work, because why would they? The long hours and the coming home at 2 o'clock in the morning and turning around and getting up at 8 the next day, and all of those things like become less worth it to you if you're not passionate about it.
You
Yeah.
you said you tried a lot for the whole, multimedia journalism thing. You got to try the photos, the videos, the writing,
Right.
all the things. Is there any aspect that you have found that is just like, nope, that's not my strong suit?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Next Gen podcast. Today, I have yet another special guest. This one is another KU grad. I feel like we haven't had any KU grads in a while, so I thought I'd bring Caroline on. Caroline, how are you doing today?
Hey, Alex, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm glad I get a day off where we could just do
I
this and
know.
have it work out. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Well, like I said, KU alum, former Media Crossroads member, alum, whatever you
Yes.
want to call it. So how I like to start off all my shows is I take one of what are, big time all day shows. It's called The Program. What they do is like a little 2-minute drill of some fast hitting questions, and I do my little like Walmart version of that.
Okay, I'm
So
ready.
no wrong answers. I will judge you for your answers, but just first thing that comes to
Okay,
mind, right? Okay. What is your
favorite.
favorite game you've ever got to like work during that game or cover?
Ooh. Ooh, that's a great question. First thing that comes to mind, last summer I was covering for a state softball, and we have a girl in our area who pitches for Wamego High School. Her name's Peyton
Mhm.
Hardenberger. She's committed to Tennessee, so
All
she's
right.
ready to go big time in a couple years. She threw, I think it was 17 innings. It went on so long that now it's a year
Mhm.
later and it's hard for me to even like remember how many it was. It was crazy. And she had the amount of strikeouts that she had was just, I think it was like north of 30 or something strikeouts in that
Goodness.
game. Like, I'd love to, I wish I had the stats in front of me because it would make it
Mhm.
such a better story. But it was crazy. One of those games where I was sitting there filming highlights and was like, okay, we're still tied. No one has scored a
Mhm.
run. What is okay? We're in, and high school softball only goes for 7 innings, right? So
Yeah,
17 is like a game and then another half a game, and they ended up winning, which was pretty cool. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. She's just for somebody to throw for that long and
for
be an
sure.
athlete in that way is it was
I
pretty
mean,
sweet.
baseball
So
players could
yeah.
never, first of all. How did that
Yeah.
even go 17 innings? Were they just like continuously tied?
Yeah, it was tied 0-0 for a long time because both the
Mm.
pitchers, they were playing an area school from the Wichita area, and both the pitchers were just dealing. I mean, it was
Wow.
fantastic. It was just a
Mhm.
masterclass performance from both the pitchers in that game, but it was just so funny because, I'm sure I wasn't alone in the stands thinking, okay, when are
Yeah.
we gonna, because nobody could get hits off of those pitchers, that they were just, putting whatever they could on the ball and throwing it so well. And it was a crazy game for both pitchers of both parts, but it was definitely one of the wildest things I've seen.
Mhm.
I would love to know, what kind of state records and, high school records nationally like that set, but it was pretty cool. So that was one of the kind of unique ones that comes to mind.
For sure. What is your favorite sport to cover and then your favorite one to watch for your own, free time?
Okay, I have a two-part answer to my favorite sport to cover. Favorite sport to cover is probably, like, I know I was just talking about softball, but high school and college softball and baseball,
Mhm.
so fun when they're good.
Right.
Like I just like I love like how like intimate's not a great word, but I just love how like the environment is like right on top of the field at a
Mhm.
softball game. And when those games are packed and when they're good and when there's runs being scored, like it's and when it's in the postseason, it's rowdy and it's so fun and people get so into it. So I've really enjoyed that and have been blessed to watch some really good baseball and softball between KU and K-State and the high school areas in our area over the last couple of years. But this other part of that answer would have to be Big 12 football, I think, just
Mhm.
because Big 12 football, like you know, is what it is. And we also are able to be on the field and shoot highlights for those games. So from a coverage standpoint, it's really awesome to kind of be down
Right.
there and getting the shots that you want. And also just kind of being up close and personal to all the action, right, is really cool. And so I really enjoy that, enjoy the access that we get, just enjoy the whole, you know, day of
For
football, right?
sure.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to the game, I'm waking up early, I'm getting there early. I'm walking through the tailgaters in the parking lot who are all stoked
Mhm.
to be there to get to the game. I'm there a couple hours early. I've settled in, got my food, you know,
Right.
got all the things. And so the whole game day experience for football is great. So those two would probably be top tier for coverage. I love covering them all, so it's hard for me to
Right.
pick favorites. But to watch, I think football and basketball are both up there.
Mhm.
I've been a football fan for, you know, as long as I've been able to figure out what football was. You know, as long as I've been figuring it able to figure out how to turn on the TV, I've been a football fan. So love football and I also just love I love basketball and I love college hoops and just the way that the postseason is structured with March Madness and whatnot. Like I so enjoy that, just the way that everybody, you know, not everybody, but could be anybody's shot any given year, right? Where it's not just
For
kind of,
sure, yeah.
yeah, the way that the college football playoff used to be and that type of thing. Like I love that it's, you know, a field of so many teams and anything can happen and it's March
Mhm.
and that type of thing. So those are probably my two favorites to watch. But again, it's so hard for me to pick
I
favorites. Like
know.
I love them. I love them all.
Mm. Well, speaking of your football fandom, I don't think I've ever heard the story. Geographically,
Right.
you should be a Broncos fan,
I
maybe a
should.
Chiefs fan.
Maybe.
How are you? Why the Vikings?
It's a long story, you know. I'll spare you the nitty-gritty details,
Mhm.
but basically we have my dad to blame for that one.
All right.
It's yes, we have my dad, he's the culprit. He's been a fan ever since he was, you know, about this tall.
Mhm.
So he's been a lifelong fan and when he was younger, that was back in the 60s and that was the late 60s and the early 70s and those were the golden days for the
Yep.
Vikings back in the Fran Tarkenton days for that crowd and when they went to 4 Super Bowls and that type of thing. So he was all over it as a kid then, you know, obviously fewer NFL teams to pick from to be fans for,
Right.
right? And my family grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. So at that time there wasn't anything really close, you know, like
Yeah.
the Oilers hadn't gone to Nashville to become the Titans. Like there wasn't really an NFL team close. It was just kind of like who was good and who was on TV. And so that's kind of how we got there, which is funny because my other two uncles, his siblings, one's a Packers fan and one is a Bears fan. So they all just kind of picked the NFC North, I guess. I don't know if that's the only channel the TV was on in the house or what, but
All right.
yeah, so I've been getting dressed in Vikings onesies, not anymore, obviously, but
Yeah.
since I was a baby, was getting dressed in Vikings onesies and was grown up to there's no way out of it, and I obviously latched on and
Mhm.
have been a diehard ever since. So kind of a long story, but
I love it.
yes, yes, we will. That is Phil Soro can answer all the rest of your questions
All right.
about that
We
one.
have pretty much the same story actually, because
Oh my gosh,
my
wow.
dad grew up in the early 70s and the Chiefs sucked. And so his options of good teams were the Cowboys and the Steelers. And he was like, can't be a
Right.
Cowboys fan.
No,
So
yeah.
he tried. We were all kind of Steelers fans until the Patrick Mahomes era. And then we are like, Dad, We're
Come
gonna get on the
on.
local team wave. They're doing well. They're really fun to watch. Why are we
Yeah,
rooting
we
for
gotta
Pittsburgh?
lock it. It's so hard to not
Exactly.
be a fan of Patrick Mahomes. Like it's especially like even, if I wasn't talking about it from a coverage standpoint, but especially
Right.
from that standpoint, listening to press conferences and,
Mhm.
pregame, postgame, mid, like all the things, like just listening to him and the way he handles things and stuff. Like it's so hard to not be a fan. So that
Oh,
makes
I
that
totally
makes
agree.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Last little random quick question to kind of give the viewers, your background before we get
Yeah.
into we go back in time and look at your journey. Is there anyone, any athlete, anyone in the sports industry, a coach, whoever, who if you met or got to interview, you would have a hard time? In journalism, we're not supposed to have bias. We're not supposed to fangirl over, you know, any of the athletes. Is there someone that you'd be like, I would struggle to keep my cool and keep it professional?
Oh gosh. That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of opportunities for me to where that like maybe could have been the
Mhm.
case, like obviously I've been able to put the work mindset
Right.
on and kind of do my thing. But I mean we were just talking about Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's a pretty
Mhm.
cool interview. If that were to happen in kind of a, setting away from the podium, like that would be pretty cool just because you're sitting there knowing that you're talking to somebody that is going to be a Hall of Famer and is the best in this
Right.
category, in this category, in this category. So that would probably be somebody to where it'd be like, okay, let me just sit back and reality check for a second. I'm doing an interview with Patrick Mahomes. Okay, great. Like that would kind of
Right.
be one of those things. I feel like for the most part, when I'm in those settings, whether it be in a Chiefs locker room or the Royals locker room or something like that, when I'm in those settings, it's kind of like scramble, go, go, go. I got to do this by
Mhm.
this time. I got to get out of here. I got to do that, like, doing all the things. So you're not really thinking about that. It's just kind of like,
Right.
okay, is my camera focused and is my microphone in the right spot and is my light on this person and can I hit like, you're not so much thinking about the external piece of it, but I think talking to Patrick Mahomes, like, if that ever were to happen in an
Right.
isolated situation, which are things that, ESPN gets to do and NFL Network
Mhm.
gets to do and those type of things. But that's gotta be one to, it would be hard to be a sports fan and not sit there and be like,
Exactly.
oh,
I
that's
think
cool.
he'd be my answer too, but I think that he is such, like, a humble, like, almost, like, nonchalant kinda guy that he would you doing that interview, you'd be able to live out your, like, professional aspirations of saying, like, "I interviewed Patrick Mahomes," but he would also and again, just never met him, obviously, but my personal like, I can totally see him like, making it a comforting space, where,
Right.
like, it doesn't feel like I'm just an interview, I do feel like an actual person, where you could kinda, like, get the best of both worlds of, I'm doing what my job wants me to, but I also feel like I had a one-on-one, personal connection
Right. Like
with
we're
him.
having a conversation. We're not interrogating.
Exactly,
Yeah, like that
exactly,
type
and
of
I feel like
thing.
he's one of those guys that totally understands, like, the role of an interviewer and of a
Yeah.
journalist, that he's gonna make it comfortable for you, which even though, like, it's your job to do it for him.
Right. No, I
So,
would agree. I would agree. I think that'd be a
yeah.
pretty cool one. So fingers crossed, maybe someday, but
Hey, one day, we'll all
you
get
never
there.
know.
Now that we kind of have an idea of, who you are, what you care about, let's go back in time a little bit. When did you even
Okay.
figure out, like, hey, journalism's for me? I want to tell people's stories and then specifically, the sports related stories.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's been a goal and a dream sounds so cliche, but
Mhm. But
it's
it
been a
is.
goal and kind of an aspiration for
Mhm.
as long as I can remember, a really long time. Like I remember being, younger, like middle school, like very early high school age, and just thinking, okay, I want to do something to where I'm gonna enjoy my work every day, right? Which is hard to do, right? I
Mhm.
just like as an adult, like that is a hard thing to find is something where you enjoy your work all the time. Like very few people have that, right? Um, So I think that was really the start of it, was like, okay, I played sports as a kid. I know I'm not gonna pursue a career in
Mhm.
sports like in college. Like as my cool as
Right.
that would have been, like they trust me, it's for the best that I didn't for everybody involved. But I
What
just was
was
like,
your
how
sport? What'd you play?
I played softball and I ran track for a little bit. So,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, but I wouldn't have been able to compete at the level that, any of the gals that are out there competing in college softball do. So, I knew that that wasn't the path for me. So I'm like, okay, how can I still be involved in the sports world, but like not on the field? And so that's kind of
Mhm.
where I got to the point of like, okay, why don't I do the something in the storytelling realm on the sidelines or something, about a team or something like that's kind of where that idea came from. And so we had a great like journalism, sports media, track electives, whatever you want to call it, at my high school in Denver,
Mhm.
to where I kind of got, feet wet a little bit and able to do some things in that space and be like learn how to edit in
Yeah.
Adobe Premiere and learn how to do that. And I'm like, okay, I like this. I like getting
Mhm.
video, I like putting it together, I like writing script, I like doing all those things. And so I really pursued that when I was looking at colleges. And that was something that I knew that I wanted, was something with not only a great journalism school, but something with a sports journalism, kind of
Mhm.
oriented environment, right? And so I had a lot of schools on the list that I went and looked at. And when I went and looked at KU, like it was a very funny story, like I won't go too far into it, but I went and looked at it and it was a blizzard. Like my tour got canceled. I ended up getting a private tour of the journalism school because the
All
whole
right.
campus was like closed down, which actually was fantastic. Like
Mhm.
worked out so much better, but I don't like being cold. So my mom was like, she's never gonna go there. And I got in the car and was like, yeah, so I'm gonna go to KU. And my parents were surprised. But I did that because KU was one of the few places that allowed students to be involved like from freshman year. And a lot of the
Yep.
other schools I looked at was like, okay, so you'll do this and this, but like you don't actually get to go do anything until you're a junior. And I was like, okay, like, you want to get involved right away, right? And
Right.
so yeah, so that's kind of where that came from. I wanted to be involved in sports in some
Mhm.
way, shape, or form. And the more that I started digging into it and actually doing things, I'm like, okay, I know how to put words on paper, right? Like I can write pretty well. The math and the numbers don't come to me naturally, but the words and the
Right.
sentences do. So I can put that together. That's kind of my strong suit. So I enjoyed that. And I also enjoy taking photos. I enjoy video. I enjoy all the things. I'm like, how can I kind of mesh that into one thing and have it be sports related? And of course, got to dabble with all of those areas when I was at KU too, and it all kind of funneled out into becoming
Right.
a multimedia sports reporter. So that's the long version, but just wanting to be involved in sports and trying a little bit of everything and trying to be as close to the space as I could without actually being in the game, with
For
a
sure.
uniform on myself. So yeah.
I think that's something that's so amazing about the sports industry is like you're not gonna have a sports reporter who doesn't love sports, you know?
Right.
Like you're gonna have a finance bro. It's not like he was practicing finances when he was 5 years old, but anyone in sports media is like it's a lifelong dream and passion to be in the sports related worlds. Like that's why we're gonna take those long hours, those weekends, those evenings,
Yeah.
and it's gonna feel not like work to us. So I love that just like overall passion that the whole like community, has. And I feel like
Yeah.
we all have the same story of like, yep, I love sports. That's why I actually enjoy this. So when you said
Yes.
you tried a lot for the whole, multimedia journalism thing, you gotta try the photos, the videos, the writing,
Right.
all the things. Is there any aspect that you have found that is just like, nope, that's not my strong suit?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I I don't want to say no and then be like, "Oh yeah, I'm great at everything," because that's not true. But
Right.
I don't think there's a part of it that I didn't enjoy.
Mhm.
I think that maybe like there were parts of it that I enjoyed like more than others, but I
For
don't think there
sure.
were any. And I mean, they're so every position. in the sports space, like they're not all the same. Like a lot of them are very different. At least like in my role as a sports MMJ, which is quite literally the nature of the word,
Right.
multimedia journalist, you're doing a little bit of everything. So it's like
Mhm.
I'm doing some writing that goes on our website for web articles. I'm doing the writing of my own scripts. I'm
Mhm.
getting my own video. I'm setting up my own interviews. I'm conducting my own interviews. I'm editing my own interviews. Like I'm the one on air fronting all, so like
Right.
there's not really a part that I don't like. Like I like they're all different, and I think full from a full-time perspective, I guess, to more answer your question, like I enjoyed the broadcast side of media
Mhm.
more than I enjoyed the print side, just because I
Right.
liked like the multifaceted,
Yeah.
skill set that I was able to tap into while doing that. And I also just enjoy, like I love visuals. So I
Right.
enjoyed I say that past tense. I'm doing it now. I enjoy being able to get things on camera, and I enjoy
Mhm.
being able to film moments, and I enjoy highlights, and I enjoy that type of thing. And I felt like that was the one part of like, which granted, like the people who do print, like there's photos and like there's all kinds of multimedia stuff that's going on in that space too, now. But just personally, I really enjoyed the assembling of the video
For
stories and
sure.
the
Yeah.
assembling of like visually being able to portray things. So I really
Mhm.
enjoyed that piece of it, but which doesn't really answer your question, but I enjoy it all. Like it's a process and like all of it's different, but I genuinely enjoy the writing and the gathering and the setting up and the assembling and all of that stuff. So it's kind of like a cycle. This like kind of starts with like the writing and ends with the editing,
Right.
and then video somewhere thrown in between. So um I enjoy it all. It's all different, but
For
good
sure.
skill set to have too.
See, I feel like I go through phases. Like one day I'm like, I want to be 100% a photographer. And the next time I'm like, wait a minute, I want to do the editing part. Like I'm
Like,
always
hang
switching what my
on.
favorite is. Yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, like at the same time, like I've always told people, like for me personally, I started out in print and like yearbook and stuff in high school. And then
Right.
like I've done a little bit of everything, ending up in radio. I'm like, I haven't found anything in sports media that I don't enjoy. And I've always thought that's a bad thing because I'm like, I can't narrow it down. But with
No, it's a
multimedia,
good
you don't want
thing.
to narrow it down anyway. So,
Yeah, because then you're,
um,
utility player, as they say,
exactly.
right?
Exactly. I'll do whatever I'm told, you know?
Yeah,
Show
yeah.
someone that I can do it. Um, with KU being your choice, how did you start to get involved? Did you show up on campus one day and how do you say, "Hey, this is what I want to do. Who's going to help me get there?"
Yeah, that's a good question too. So many good questions today.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, I was kind of directed, as like a scared little freshman of the
Mhm.
people that I should go talk to in the journalism school, and it feels so long ago now, it makes me feel old, but I went and eventually, found Cal Butcher, who you know
Mhm.
well, over at KU, and I have Cal to thank for a
Of
lot
course.
of things that I have going for me right now. Because he really, I kind of went in there and was like, hey, like this is what I'm looking to do. And he's like, all right, well, this is where we can get you started. And so I got kind of involved in extracurriculars that way. And I also was enrolled in some classes too. So that was just kind of like an automatic,
Right.
like, getting me into the mix of things. And one of those classes was Cal's class. So I was in one of
Mhm.
his very early like video production classes too. A little bit of a weird thing just for, people in my age, but my freshman year was cut off by COVID, like the second half
Yeah.
of my second semester. So that kind of looked a little funky. Like I probably would have been more involved than I was freshman year, like had all that obviously, none of us
Right.
were on campus, right? So that was going on a little bit, and then things were a little tricky sophomore year too,
Mhm.
until we kind of got to like that following spring of like 21 when things kind of
Yeah.
started to like mellow out a little bit. We were able to do more things. So it's kind of like weird for me to where like maybe it like wasn't typical because I like wasn't there, as much
Right.
as because I was at home in Denver, like so yeah, so kind of a weird thing, but that sophomore year I came back and Cal gave me an opportunity to be on Playmakers, which
Mhm.
is KU's um kind of like flagship sports broadcast, and
Right.
they do a lot of great things and a lot of great, a lot of that, all that happens outside of class time. And so in addition to taking classes, I also like that was really when I got involved in that, and just
Mhm.
kind of got gradually more and more involved as I got older. But yeah, it started with me going out and just kind of saying what I wanted to do and then going out and filming some soccer highlights over at Rock Chalk Park for KU out in the cold weather and, turning some things around for Cal's class and trying all the different classes. And I also kind of I dabbled with the Daily Kansan too. I started
Mhm.
writing there the fall of my junior year, and then I was the co-sports editor like the spring semester of my junior year. So was kind of encouraged to do that by a couple of classmates too, and like actually ended up really enjoying it and diving full into it. And yeah, so just trying a little bit of everything, getting some graphic
Sure.
design out in those classes, and going and sitting with Heather Lorenz in the J School. She's a rock star at all things Adobe related. So did a couple sessions with her, and
Mhm.
to learn some of the graphic stuff for classes and that type of thing. So it all started with Cal, and then it all all
I
kind of
think I think you're probably my fifth or so like Cal alum. I've had Bez on here, I've had Blake, I've had Carter. We need to just get Cal on at this point. Like he's a little too old
I
for our demographic, but he gets mentioned in so many
know.
episodes that he doesn't know how famous he is.
I know,
Um,
well, because he's played a big part for a lot of people, so that
he
makes
has
sense.
for sure. If I remember correctly, you were on the production side of Playmakers for a time as well. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Um, how do you look back now at something that was like it was your baby for a while? Like, I mean, I produced what was it? Like our little betting show that had like a 2 semester runs, like very
Right.
minimal effort compared to Playmakers. And I was like busting my butt to get that done every week. How did you manage an entire show as well as being a full-time college kid? And how do you look back at it now and like, look at its growth, its progress and think, "Hey,
Yeah.
I helped."
Yeah, no, it's really cool to see where it's at now versus like where it was kind of when,
Mhm.
I got started there, and then excuse me, even from getting started there to moving into that producer role, like things were even different then, but it wasn't, so much about me as it was about like the people who were there and my fellow students who wanted to contribute and wanted to show up and were
Mhm.
excited and like eager to do things. Because like you said, it is a full show and it's a 30-minute show. And now that I'm, in the news business, I mean, we have like, gosh, like five, several 30-minute shows an evening, right? So like that's
Mhm.
very normal to me now. But back
Right.
then it was like, okay, one 30-minute show a week, like this is a big deal, and so it's like very normal in the space now, but like then it's like, okay, like yeah, like this is a big deal. It takes us all week to gather stuff and put it together. And so there was a lot of other people that, were carrying the weight as well. But I was a co-producer with Lily Witkowski. She works for KU Athletics now, and her and I worked so great together. And we things that I didn't pick up on, she picked up on, and things that she didn't pick up, I picked up. So like
Right.
we had a very good, like not only are we very good friends, but we had a very good working relationship too. And we put in a lot of hours behind the scenes, like, together planning stuff out of like, okay, how can we do this? Okay, like how can we help these people do this? Okay, like you're gonna
Mhm.
go with them to this, and I'll, like just kind of like making sure other people were getting the help that they needed and like doing the things that they were supposed to do and that type of thing. So I feel like I like I feel like it was in a great place, Playmakers itself, when I kind of got involved as a sophomore, and then I feel like it continued to stay in a really great place when Lily and I took over.
Mhm.
And then I feel like now it's also in a really great place. So something that we really tried to do when I was there, just because I was part-time at my current job and in the space and kind of being like, okay, this is how things operate. So like let's do things that would prepare us, right, for
Right.
that next step. Like, let's do things like the way that they're doing in the professional world. Because at the end
Right.
of the day, when you're in college, you're trying to learn and you're trying to learn how to succeed professionally, right? So, something that we really worked a lot on and trying to kind of like hit home was the storytelling piece and
Mhm.
was the let's, obviously broadcast term incoming, but let's turn packages now, right?
Mhm.
Rather than okay, yeah, let's just like, read this series of highlights and stuff. Like, that's
Right.
great. Like, there's a place for that. Like, like ESPN does that every night. Like, I do that in my
Yep.
sportscast now, but there's a place for that, but there's also a place for both. And so I think that something that we like tried to like kind of like, ingrain was the turning of packages and was
Mhm.
the storytelling and was going and gathering things rather than pulling them off the internet and like, like that type of thing. So, and I think that there's a lot of that that's going on now when I look back and I see things on social media that are being posted and sit down interviews that are happening and like those types of things. And a lot of that's a testament to the people who are committed and want to be doing that and are trying to better themselves and contribute like heck yeah, like like that's
Yeah.
fantastic because that's a lot of the stuff that I do now in my job.
Right.
So I think that's what we were trying to do was to make it run more like not like a newscast, but just run more like a show where there's
Mhm.
some banter, there's some storytelling, there's a little like there you have a little bit of everything in a show, right?
Right.
So I think we really tried to hit hard on that. And I feel like from what I've seen, and obviously, I'm not there, so other people might completely tell me that I'm just making stuff up and that's fine. But I feel like that's kind of stuck and translated over because I see a lot of that going on social media, which I think is pretty cool. Because that's one of the, at least just personally, like one of the best parts of the job, like once you get to the professional space that I'm in is like being able to tell stories. Like that's awesome.
Mhm.
Like that's the favorite part of my job. So we really try to drill that in and yeah, it seems like it's in a really good spot and
Yeah.
even more present on social media than it was when I was there. And that was something we were trying to work on back then too. So it's really cool to kind of see where it's at and see how people like latched onto it and still want to contribute
Yeah.
and stuff. So it's cool.
It's a great show. I mean,
Yeah, no, it's
you
awesome.
did mention your how you would learn things from, the professional side and try to bring them back in. That's a lot of responsibility to take on as a college kid. Not only are you doing your classes, you're doing your, part-time job, and then you're trying to basically be a teacher and a leader as well for all these
Right.
other students. I mean, you could have done the bare minimum. What led you and Lily to say, "We're going to expand the success of this and expand the, knowledge and success of the other students that are doing this with us?" What made you guys want to take it above and beyond?
Yeah, I think it's all about just a passion for what you do, just a
Mhm.
passion for, and that translates over to what I do now. And that was true back then. And like Lily's the same way. We're both, I don't want to, speak for her, but we're both very driven. And so like
Right.
when either of us is involved in something like we're involved like I
Mhm.
am like if I'm going to be involved in something like why would I be involved at it at
Right.
50% right like that I might as well not be involved so and I've always been that way like school has been very important to me like I would sit at the
Mhm.
kitchen counter and cry while my dad tried to teach me math homework in high
Yep.
school like I'd sit there and sob because I didn't get it and I wanted to get it like I'd spend hours on my physics homework because I didn't get it and I wanted to get it. Like, so that's always been there for me. And I think also when you're in that space, like, and you are in somewhere where you're contributing and other people are contributing and you're trying to drive people to contribute and you're trying to kind of set an example and you're also like trying to help like I think that it is on you to,
Mhm.
like you get out what you put in, right? So like I
For
don't
sure.
expect this person to put in work if I'm not going to put in work, because why would they? If I can't ask them to
Yeah.
do something that I wouldn't do. So that's crazy, right? Because then they'd
Mhm.
be like, well, you wouldn't do that, so I'm not doing it. Yeah, you know what? Fair enough. Like you make a good point.
Right.
So um that's kind of where that came from. And also, yeah, I just am passionate about it, and I'm passionate about, sorry, they're blowing leaves or something outside my apartment.
Good.
I don't know what's going on. Anyway, yeah, like I'm passionate about it, not just about the work, but I'm also passionate about the subject matters too, which I
Mhm.
think, a lot of people in that space are. Like when you're a student, like if you're not putting the work in, like what are you doing, right? Because that's what you're in college for. Like you can kind of hang out and do whatever you want, like freshman, sophomore year, but when you get to junior, senior year, it's like, okay, I am in school to learn. I'm not going
Right.
to learn unless I do things, and I'm not going to get a job unless I do things. So, I think that's also kind of where that came from too, was where I wanted to contribute to the show a lot, wanted to help other people, because it's like I've been in a newsroom, I've had this, like if you want to do that, here's how we do it here. Let me like offer some advice, like let me like,
Right.
and I by no means have all the answers, but just,
Mhm.
I love to help people and love to, offer any type of like real person experience that I can, that you wouldn't get elsewhere, right? Because
Right.
that's valuable.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I think it came from that place, and also from trying to better myself, and also like, okay, how can I continue to, teach but also learn, and also get better at doing these things so that I have more to show and more to offer for myself when I go to look for another job down the road, right?
Yeah.
So like, and all those things kind of go hand in hand. So it kind of came from that. Yeah, it came from that, but that senior year was crazy. I mean, it was
Mhm.
it was wild. I was working part-time at KSNT, working part-time at 247 Sports, and working producing Playmakers and taking all my classes. So, it was a lot, but and I had a lot to show for that time, and I
Yeah.
also like learned a lot of really valuable stuff, and so it's busy and balance is great, but like when you're passionate about something, like it's easy is not the right word, but like you
Mhm.
find ways to make it work because you
Exactly.
want to, right?
Yeah.
So, it's busy and it's crazy, but if you're passionate about it and you enjoy it, like it's rewarding too.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I think that's where that came from. Just wanting others to succeed, wanting to succeed, wanting the show to succeed, like wanting all the things to
Mhm.
do well. And, you know, you can't grow if you don't water it. So putting
Right.
work in
Right.
is a way to go with that stuff.
For sure. Well, I think we've talked about KU enough. We've given Cal enough credit. Let's move on to how you got where you are now. Obviously, you've said a couple times you were working part-time. How did you get those
Yeah.
jobs, while you hadn't graduated yet?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, we'll start with 247 just because I did a shorter stint there, but I think just from being at things, being at press conferences, like I had, bumped into the people that work for 247 full
Mhm.
time and cover KU, and so I actually had them reach out to me, and this was when I was working for the Kansan, so I was, cranking out a lot more print content,
Yep.
right, rather than the broadcast stuff. And so, but they knew I could do both, so they kind of came to me and were like, "Hey, like we'd love to have you write for us, but like, we've also seen your stuff like online, and we love the video stuff that you've put together. So if you want to come, like we have a role for you to do both. Like we're trying to revamp our multimedia stuff, which listen up, that's where a lot of people are going now, right? They're getting into the multimedia space. So a lot more opportunities, I'm sure, for people out there looking for that stuff. But yeah, that's kind of where that came from. And that was kind of offered to me, but it was offered to me because I was at things, and because I
Right.
was posting my stuff, and because I was introducing myself to people. Like it they wouldn't have known who I was if I wasn't posting my stuff on Twitter or being
Mhm.
active on LinkedIn or bumping into people at press conferences or involved in the journalism school or to
Right.
where a professor would give a good word about me. So that all came from being involved because otherwise you're not going to get seen. So that's
Sure.
kind of where that came from. They sought me out and I worked part-time there for my whole senior year. And the case was kind of similar with KS&T, to where it was kind of like a mutual like reaching out. Like
Yeah.
it just kind of like happened, which is rare. And
Mhm.
I'm very grateful that it did. But yeah, kind of one of those things where our boss was in the J school like quite a bit, just trying to recruit and build rapport and those types of things, and bumped into him a couple times and also like knew a couple of the people that worked there at the time. I think that that were KU grads or former KUers or whatever.
Right.
Just knew a couple people from down the line and who were there and were able to offer words of wisdom and also like put in good words for me and that type of thing. And so I ended up getting offered a part-time role there as a news reporter. And I took it because it was a news job, yes, but there were going to be opportunities for me to go shoot high school sports on Friday nights. And so I started in the fall of senior year, which means football. So I was there a couple days a week. And I was also, or no, I started right before the summer. It all blends together. I started
Yeah.
before the summer, so I was working like a decent amount that summer, and then I went to part-time and like shooting football in the fall, and then transitioned to shooting basketball through the
Mhm.
winter and that type of thing. And because of that, I built a lot of trust with the sports team at the time, and so when that spring rolled around and like winter-ish, like because they knew that I was involved in KU and I had done all this stuff before, and I was
Mhm.
wanted to be involved in sports, like if there was an extra KU availability,
Mhm.
press conference that they couldn't get to, they were like, "Hey, can you take a camera and can you go?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, absolutely." As long as I'm not clocking over 40 hours a week as a part-timer, like
Right.
we're good. So
Yeah.
I ended up working a lot more than I was supposed to, but like it was, I was picking that up obviously, but like I ended up working probably like anywhere from like 20 to 30 hours a week like doing that just
Mhm.
because the opportunity was there and it's like I'm not going to say no.
Right.
And that's a great thing to know is like don't say no when that
Mhm.
stuff like comes your way because like you can try it and if you don't like it that's fine, but like I don't say no because then what happened when I went full time was I was offered a full-time job and was told there would be a sports opening sometime within the next year, and when that opening came around, if I showed what I needed to show, I would get
Mhm.
that job. And I did. And here I am. So, but I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I not thrown myself into the high school stuff and taken every kind of, hey, do you want to go get this? Yep, I got it. Hey, do you want to? Yep, I'm there. Hey, do you want to? I will be there. I'm actually already there. I already got it before
Yeah.
you asked. Like, like, so I wouldn't have gotten that offered to me, like, probably had I not done those things. So that's kind of how that worked out. It was went from a part-time to a part-time like news sports role to a
Mhm.
full-time technically news role to where I was still helping out with sports quite a bit, like
Yeah.
helping them when they couldn't get to things, like filming games on Friday nights, like great way to get involved in the space, by the way. It's really good stuff and really fun too. And then eventually, yeah, got to the full-time sports role and now I anchor, 3 to 4 nights a
Mhm.
week and, report when I can and am one of two in the sports department right now. So yeah, that's kind of how that came all from just kind of, putting in work and talking to the right people and putting stuff out there so that people see it and
Right.
kind of saw what I can do and that type of thing. So
Well,
yeah.
I know changes every day. You're doing something a little bit different. Sometimes you're gonna be out at Kaufman, sometimes you're gonna be in studio anchoring. Give me like just a general day in the life of a, sports reporter, anchor, multimedia,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, give me the hours because we know they're not great. You might be anchoring at 10 p.m. at night. Give me like a general, like, what your life looks like, starting out in this role.
Yeah, that's a good question too. And also a good point because no, every day is not the same. Every day is very different actually. Like yesterday I had it snuck up on me and turned into a 12-hour day, but I was over at a football press conference at 1 o'clock in the
Mhm.
afternoon and then driving over to Lawrence and getting a softball and a baseball game and interviewing those coaches there afterward and sending back highlights and doing all the things and coming back. So
Mhm.
a reporting day, that's pretty typical. An anchoring day, and the hours are hard to nail down because they vary.
Mhm.
So like technically our schedule's supposed to be like 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. When you're in sports, like that very much has a little star next to it because
Yeah.
like yesterday I worked from 11:30 to 11:30, right? Or
Mhm.
like, I went to opening day last weekend for the Royals and I worked from noon to 10:30. Like
Right.
so you're
Right.
kind of at the mercy of the press conferences you want to get to, the interviews you want to get, the games you want to get to, like you're kind of at the
Mhm.
mercy of that. Like on a very typical, like average, like slow day, like I had a couple of those earlier this week. I'll go in at 2 o'clock. If there's a meeting, I will assemble my 6 o'clock show, putting some um Vosot type stories together, just putting stories together for that, filling a however many minutes I asked for and was allotted, usually like somewhere between 2 and 3, which doesn't sound like a lot, but 3 minutes is on the long end and two is probably closer to the average. So yeah, I do the 6 o'clock, put my 9 o'clock show together, maybe take a dinner break if I have time. A
Mhm.
lot of times not. Work on my 10 o'clock show, do my 10 o'clock, get anything that I need to up on the website if it warrants it, and then go home. So that's a typical 2 to 11 day, which are like more chill. I don't know if chill's
Right.
the right word because no day
Yeah.
is ever super chill. But yeah, then there's game days when,
Mhm.
you got a football game at 11. Okay, that means you're leaving the house at 7:30 in the morning and you're
Right.
getting to the stadium at 9 and you're getting yourself set up and then you're there for the game and then you're, you know, turning whatever you need to turn on camera, whether that be a look live or a live shot for your 6 o'clock show, your 10 o'clock shows, whatever, and then you're going
Mhm.
home. So every day is a little different, but it either involves me being in the studio for a chunk of time, handling all the shows and
Mhm.
cutting video that we have in house and listening to press conferences and turning those into stories and pulling sound bites and those type of things. Or it's me out and about at something.
Right.
So yeah, so that could be at a game. That could be going and getting a, high school kid, an interview with a high school kid, and then filming practice and then coming back. That could be going and doing a sit down interview with KU's head volleyball coach. My coworker's doing that today. There could be a lot of different things that comes with any given day, but that's why it's fun, is because it's hard to manage at times. We only do our, schedule like a week in advance just because there's so much
Right.
going on, and it's hard to do it any farther than that. So it can be kind of weird, but once you get used to it, like it's great because it's not like you're
Mhm.
just, going somewhere and sitting at a desk and staring into space every day. It's like,
Right.
oh, I went to Royals opening day today and it was for
Mhm.
work. Awesome. Okay. I went to, the Big 12 tournament and it was for work. Sweet. Like, am I working and busy and running around like a crazy person the whole time? Absolutely. But that's
Right.
that's okay. Like it comes with it. So every day's a little different. Hours adjust, days off
Mhm.
move around. But like we were talking about earlier, like if you're passionate and you enjoy it, like you get used to it and you just kind of rock with it. So it's a strange lifestyle, but
It
it's
is, for
fun.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun.
Well, my last question was pretty much how do you make it all worth it? But I think you just kinda answered that of, the inconsistencies, they're there, but if you're
Yeah.
passionate, it's worth it. So, I think that's about about all I have for you today.
Yeah.
Thanks for chatting with me. I guess my last thing is, do you have any piece of advice for, the younger journalists out there that say, "Hey, I want to be a multimedia journalist." Like, what's like the number one thing you could tell them to do? What would you tell them?
Oh, um, gosh. Well, there's a lot. But I guess the biggest thing would be kind of I touched on this a little bit earlier, but like put yourself out there. Like
Mhm.
in terms of both trying everything and figuring out what you like, what you're good at, and what you don't like, and what you're not good at, right? Like
Right.
figuring those out is great because it either narrows it down for you and you're like, okay, I only want to write, I only want to be on camera, I only want to do broadcast. Fine. Any of those is awesome. Or it opens a lot of other doors for you to where, oh, I could apply for this job because I'm good at that. Or I could apply for this, like
Mhm.
both things are great. Like that both things are good. So trying a little bit of everything is what I would tell people because that's how you figure out what you want. Like you might be good at something, but you might hate it. So like why don't you
Right.
do the, thing that you like, that type of thing. And also putting yourself out there. Like I get a lot of traction on my content online because I keep at it and I
Right.
post and like which I think is important, like not only to get yourself visibility but also to share your work but share important stories with other people, and that's kind of how
Yeah.
people get to see those things, which is the whole point of your work, and also how they get to
Mhm.
see you and how they get to kind of you put yourself out there and that type of thing. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, and the other thing would be like if you want to work in sports, like it's so fun and it's so rewarding, but like we've talked about, like you have to be passionate about it because if you're
Right.
not, it's hard. Like if you're not, like the long hours and the coming home at 2 o'clock in the morning and turning around and getting up at 8 the next day and the
Mhm.
driving all over Northeast Kansas and like,
Right.
all of those things like become less worth it to you if you're not passionate about it. Like sometimes I
Mhm.
talk to people that aren't in the space, and they'll be like, why are you doing this to yourself? And it's like, because I love the work. Like I'm tired and I need a
Right.
coffee, but I love the work. So I think that's just something to keep in mind is like if you're passionate about it, go all in or,
Mhm.
try it. And if you're like, okay, like I'm on the fence, like that's fine. Like maybe try some other things too. So
Right.
it's a hard space to be in if you're not like 100% committed, but like if you are, it's really fun. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's all I got. I'm sorry, I've been rambling
No.
and talking like
No,
a
it's
crazy,
perfect.
crazy person. So this
Yeah.
this is the journalist. This is what we do. We
I
talk for
know.
a
I
living.
know.
So
It's perfect. Well, I guess very last thing is being an MMJ your end game dream job, or could you see yourself pursuing another avenue of the sports industry someday?
yeah, I definitely could just because I mentioned, I'm not married to the title of
Mhm.
MMJ, like, and there are so many aspects of that job that can be applied to other places that I really enjoy. Like
Yeah.
I would love to be part of, a team or an organization type role at some point,
Right.
like regardless of what that looks like. Like obviously, like don't put me in front of finance or anything that involves numbers. Like trust
Right.
me, you don't want me. But
Me
like
neither.
if
Yeah.
if it's, communications, like team related, like
Mhm.
community out, like I love that type of stuff. And so I think anything that kind of falls under that umbrella would be something that I'm really interested in. And yeah, gosh, dream job is a hard one.
Mhm.
The dream used to be, sideline reporter for Fox or something like that, but the dream changes all the time,
Right.
and that's still in the back of my mind. But the dream would just to be, maybe like a top tier like sports storyteller, right? Regardless of where that is. Like ESPN 30 for 30s are awesome.
Mhm.
Sit downs that, these different networks do with coaches are fantastic. So working for a network or a team In some capacity similar to that would probably be the end goal. So we'll see.
Nice. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I always say that here. I get made fun of. Everyone here is like, Alex, you're so bad at sports stats. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I care about the stories more than the
Yes.
stats, you
The
know? So I love
stories are
that. That's your
fun.
like be a little storyteller. Well, Caroline,
Yeah.
this was great. And I'm starting to get on the timeline of my editor is gonna be like, you gave me so much work to do.
Fair enough.
You know how that is. So
I
let's
do.
wrap this up. I'm sure we could ramble on for another hour. Um, but I want to get you out of here. So everyone out there, thanks again for watching this episode. This episode is brought to you per usual by 810 Sports Radio, bringing you the edition of athletes, reporters, multimedia journalists, fans, all the above on the 810 Sports Radio Network right here. So thanks everyone for tuning in. And then make sure to follow Caroline.Soro on Instagram and Caroline_Soro on Twitter. Had to do a little switch up on us, it looks like. But
I am sorry.
no, I think mine are the same way. It's like consistency, don't know her. Can't get
Out
the
the
same name.
window. Out the
It's
window.
close enough. Anyways, everyone, make sure you follow Caroline and to continue watching her journey of where she goes as a multimedia journalist. So, Caroline, thanks. This was a blast. Let's do it again sometime.
That sounds great. Anytime you need me, I'm here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, we'll see y'all later.